Big thanks to Kamado Joe for sponsoring this episode.
My butcher told me to make this steak. No, not a mistake. He told me to get specifically this steak. My butcher told me that this steak is more tender than a picanha and it's more flavorful than a beef tenderloin. If half of what he is saying is true, then we hit the jackpot. This is the rump steak. It is a beautiful, thick piece of beef. Now this is a very lean version, which comes from a lean cow. I see that this piece of meat has a nice dark color, which means it has a lot of flavor. And I also see long grains running in this direction. And if we flip it around, I see that there's some silver skin right here, and the butcher warned me for that. If it is as good as he says for the price that it is, then there is an addertje onder het gras. A snake under the grass? Is that a thing? Like a python? Oh, that's not good. Because of course, it's not gonna be as easy as 1, 2, 3. Luckily, my butcher sent me a video on how to get the
Moet je even goed kijken.
the connective tissue out. Full instructions, very clear. Yeah, very clear. Thank you, Gert-Jan. Let's try. I'm going to take my deboning knife and I'm going to figure out where this connective tissue is. I can see some of it sitting here and I can see some of it sitting here. I'm going to try and get it out and see if we can figure out to cut a proper steak out of this beautiful piece of beef. Look, there it is. You see the silver skin right there? Let's see if we can follow this. It's a very thin piece of silver skin, so you see how easy I cut through this? And as a matter of fact, I think it's already disappeared. This is just that little piece right there. And then I'm going to go underneath and remove that. Here's another one. This is the second one that's running here. It looks a little thicker. A part of the grain is running in this direction. A part of the grain is running in this direction. So it's kind of like multiple cuts coming together. So I'm going to take a different knife and I'm going to make a cross-section steak so we can take a look inside this steak. And that's what this looks like. The rump steak. First I'm going to cut it into real nice thick steak slices. Running through it with my knife is like running through butter. Look at that. Isn't that a beautiful piece of beef? Absolutely gorgeous. We're gonna cook it as it is. I'm gonna set up my Kamado Joe for direct grilling. First I'm gonna remove the grill grates and the heat deflectors. Then I'm gonna load it up with charcoal, put 3 fire starters in and fire it up. If you want to speed things up, you can just put that charcoal, move it around a little bit, cover the fire starters halfway. That's gonna speed up the process, but it's not necessary. More important is to open the bottom vent and to make sure you have enough airflow right there. You can even take out the tray like this so you have maximum amount of airflow. Now my charcoal is red glowing hot and we're ready to start cooking. I'm only gonna put in my grill grates because I'm gonna be using direct heat, and especially for my side dishes that I'm gonna make for my steak. First thing that I'm gonna do is make some garlic butter. Beautiful fresh garlic cloves, loaded with olive oil. It's not a waste of olive oil because we're going to use that oil later on. First we're going to make these garlic cloves really nice and tasty. We're going to slowly let the oil come up to temperature and soften the garlic. Use a fork to find out if they're fully cooked and turned completely soft. Then take them off the grill. Chop fine a twig of rosemary. I'm going to use my chef's knife to make that rocking motion. Then add the rosemary to the garlic. Add 250 grams of butter, 2 teaspoons of finishing salt and half a teaspoon of ground black pepper. Mix it up until you end up with a beautiful smooth garlic butter. So if you're looking for a good garlic butter recipe, we wrote this down for you on PitmasterX.com. So it's easy for you to replicate this, do this at home. Oh, landed in my mouth. I'm going to lower the grill grates. I'm going to put in a cast iron pan and I'm going to reuse the olive oil that I cooked my garlic in, followed by these super sweet, tasty cherry tomatoes with a few twigs of rosemary, some fresh ground pepper and some salt. Let these tomatoes slowly fry until they're completely soft. When the tomatoes have turned soft, load them onto a plate, then grate on some pecorino cheese and let that melt onto the tomatoes. The pecorino cheese is gonna give it a real nice umami flavor. The tomatoes have a strong umami flavor. The acidity is gone and it turned into sweetness. The pecorino is gonna bring the saltiness. And we're just gonna set this aside and let it melt. I'm gonna use a bread knife to cut up this leftover yesterday's baguette. I always found that the leftover baguettes are stronger. Not really nice to bite in, but absolutely perfect to make bruschetta.
Spoiled the surprise.
Yeah, sorry, I did that right there, but we're almost there. Just hold on. Let me show you how it's done. I'm gonna put a little bit of garlic on each slice of that old baguette. The barbecue is running at a temperature of around 140 degrees Celsius, which is roasting temperatures. So I'm gonna put the baguette in with the butter on top of the baguette. Then I'm gonna close the lid and let the butter melt. You see that these three are already nice and browned, so I gotta keep my eye on those. Quickly close the lid, let it run for about 10 seconds or so, and then check back into them. Beautiful garlic bread, looks amazing already, but it's not done because I'm gonna put those rich, creamy roasted tomatoes with a pecorino on top of the bruschetta. Crispy, roasted, garlicky bread, roasted tomato with rosemary and pecorino on top. The ultimate bruschetta. You can't make this in the kitchen, you gotta do this on the grill. And now finally it's time to cook our steak. So I got my meter thermometer here because I'm gonna be cooking that steak over indirect heat. Stick it in the center. Now this is the meter thermometer. And the cool thing about this device is that I can keep my eye on the temperature while I'm cooking it. And especially with the reverse sear, it matters at what temperature your steak is at. So now I'm going to go into my app and I have thermometer number 4 in. I'm going to set it to the temperature that I want to. Of course, I'm going to be cooking beef. And look at that. This steak is right there. The rump steak.
You didn't even know the steak.
I didn't even know that. I never cooked this steak and it's in my meter app. I'm going to set it to a temperature of 52 degrees Celsius. I'm going to take it off when the meter app tells me to take it off. And they think about resting too, so you don't have to worry about that either. Now I'm going to set my kamado Joe up for the reverse sear method, which means I'm going to remove one grill grate, put in the heat deflector, and then take that grill grate and set it to the lowest position. Now I created an indirect zone and a direct zone at the same time. And that means that when I'm cooking, I don't have to set up the barbecue in a different way. I can just continue with what I'm doing without hassling. Steak goes on over indirect heat, and I'm going to dial in the barbecue to around 140 degrees Celsius. And when I get the notification from my app, it's time to take the steak off the grill. I'm gonna just set it aside and let it rest for 2 minutes. I was thinking that, well, if you're doing a test, you want to keep everything as pure as possible, but since we made the garlic butter, you can put a little something on while it's resting. Just such a waste not to use the opportunity. And that butter, that's gonna help when cooking it, because this is such a lean cut of beef that a little bit of butter will just help it form a crust while we start grilling it later on. In the meantime, I'm going to open up the lid of my kamado Joe and open up the bottom vent all the way so it has a maximum amount of airflow and it will come up to temperature for a good sear. The embers are red glowing hot, flames are shooting out of the charcoal. Let's flip the steak around. Of course, I'm going to give it a good sear on both sides. Whoop, there it is. Oh, steak is done. It's time to start slicing into it. Now is the big moment. Find out if this is a good steak for a good price, or we gotta look for another butcher. No. Gert-Jan, that's a joke. It's a joke. Let's slice into this. Ooh, look at that juicy steak. That looks pretty good to me. That is one tasty, juicy looking steak. Whoa. Salt and pepper. Gotta have a little salt and pepper. Juicy steak. Looks absolutely amazing. It's tender. Beefy. All I can think of at this moment is the price. I mean, come on. Beef tenderloin costs 65 euros the kilogram. And this is 10 euros a kilogram. It is really tender. It is really flavorful. This is really good. Now comparing it to picanha is around 45 euros a kilogram, but comparing it with beef tenderloin and then having that price difference, I think this is a really good alternative. I'll definitely buy it again. Or you can just load it onto your bruschetta.